Hey, Josh, so talk to us. What's one piece of advice you can give us this Monday morning?
Hey, Michael, this is for our business owners out there, and it's probably going to be a piece of advice that's definitely unconventional, probably a little controversial, but I'll tell you, it's based in my personal research. It's based in my personal experience. I've done this. I know people that have done this. It's limiting your growth in order to be profitable. Now,
Mm.
as a company, if you're growing a business, those two things sound at odds, right? You're like, no, I'm trying to grow because I want to be profitable and have a profitable business. But often what happens, especially in the dental profession, because practices can grow and they can grow quickly. And we begin to keep up with that growth and chase that growth, which just sucks cash out of the organization. We have so many expenses and we're hiring new team members and we've got 30 new patients a month, but we could probably see 45. So now you're looking at bringing on an associate. We're expanding, you're remodeling, you're renovating. All these things continue as we chase growth. And what that does is it just eats up the cash from the organization. The upside is you're growing a more valuable organization. So I get that. We don't need to talk about equity and all that stuff. I understand
Mhm.
that's one side of it. But in order to actually see profit, when we talk about EBITDA being 10%, 20%, pushing 30 to 40% of dental practice, that's like super amazing. You oftentimes have to get to a place where you're limiting your growth in order to let the fixed expenses kind of cap and the profit begin to rise.
Interesting. Okay, so then how does growth suck cash from the initial start? What are some of the early symptoms where you're like, okay, maybe we need to start slowing it down? And then what are some of the barriers or boundaries we can put to start slowing it down properly?
Yeah, no, it's such a great question. And a lot of times we get into the cycle before we even realize it. Like you've got to
Mhm.
start up. A lot of times it could be you and a clinical assistant. And then all of a sudden you start getting patients. You're like, okay, I'm going to stop doing my own hygiene. I'm going to hire a hygienist. That's a financial commitment. Early on, you're wondering if it's even the right time. Do I have the money to do that? And then more new patients come in. So you hire another assistant, then you hire front office, then you hire another hygienist. And this whole cycle keeps going as new patients start coming in. The patient base is growing. So now all of a sudden you're like, I only had 3 ops outfitted. Okay, let me get the next 2 built out. Then you're like, okay, now we're full again. Now let me bust out through the side and add another 3 ops and rent that space. Then you're like, okay, now I need an associate. The more you grow, almost the more big ticket these expenses get, because now you're hiring
Mm.
an associate. Now you're expanding your space. Now you're moving locations. Now you're buying a building to do it. And so you just get all these expenses going. And I'll tell you from personal experience, what we did with Studio 88, this was about 3 years ago. And I was having lots of conversations around this with other business owners way ahead of me. And I
Mhm.
said, how do you grow and be profitable? Because we were growing, but man, it was almost like expenses and revenue were just in line with each other. We were never seeing
Really?
that separation, but we were like having to hire people. Like, oh my gosh, we got these more new clients. We got to hire all these other people. So I had these conversations with about 3 or 4 business owners. I said, how do you grow and be profitable? And all 3 of them were like, you can't. There's seasons where you're profitable, but usually it's because you're spending less money. And then there's seasons where you're growing and you're really spending, you're investing in the business and putting out capital. And those are very hard seasons to be profitable. So what we did about 3 years ago was said, okay, we're going to cap our client growth at 8 a month. I already have a team in place. We can handle 8 a month. So let's go this entire year and let's just do 8 and see what happens. And all of a sudden, when we controlled that fixed cost, that kind of leveled out, and then our profit began to rise. And then by the end of the year, I think we were hitting like 12 to 14% profit. And I was like, oh my gosh, this was amazing. And then we added more team to go to 10 new clients a month. Expenses kind of jumped up a little bit, but again, we saw that separation. And so there are seasons like of growing a business. And you may just be like, man, I just need the growth and trying to hit some like number. And I just want to build a $10 million, $20 million organization. Cool. But then there's some of us where it's like, we're growing, but we want to be profitable as well. How do we do that? And it could just be looking at your new patients and going, it's okay if we cap it at 25 a month, at 30 a month. And I maintain that team. And let's just have a year where we grow and you control those fixed costs. Don't renovate, don't hire an associate, don't bring on another hygienist. Just serve that patient base really well for that year and let that profit begin to expand.
Interesting. Okay, so then real quick, asking you, what made you come up with eight?
Oh, like 8 new clients a month?
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with our name. It was just when you,
That's what
when
I
you
was
said that,
thinking.
I was like, yeah, no, it honestly was like that was the capacity of the team. I went to our creative team, photographers, videographers, designers, developers, account managers. I said, what do you guys feel comfortable with us taking? And we kind of reverse engineered it. We were like, I think if we did 8 a month, we would feel great about the level of service, the level of creativity, and not overwhelming our team consistently. And so we said, great. And that's kind of how we
Mm.
capped it. Organizations that go from 0 to 1 million is a whole different dynamic. The key is selling. When you're growing from a startup to 1 million in revenue, it's just sales. And we don't like to talk about that in the dental practice, but it literally is get as many new patients in as possible, create revenue, like just go, go, go. We call it like sell like hell, man. You just like do it all to get the revenue in. But organizations, once they get above 1 million, they start to switch. Now you've proven a market fit. You're doing $1 million in your community. You're a solid practice. You've proven your practice fits in that community. You've got something. Now you've got to start focusing on scalable infrastructure. Now you got to realize that growing like that begins to suck cash. But as you go from like 1 million to 10 million, the complexities increase a ton. You need cash not only to grow, but you got to bring on somebody for HR. You got to bring on somebody for as like a practice administrator. All of a sudden you have people on your team that are now making 6 figures, and it's just infrastructure. It has nothing to do with selling or creating revenue. These are just people that the structure needs. And so you realize a lot of times when practices get above 1 million and they're just grow, 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 all of a sudden they find themselves strapped for cash because they never created profit. And now they got to invest in infrastructure and how the organization begins to scale towards the next complexity.
So then what do you recommend when we pass that million mark? What can we start looking into, books or instructions or advice where it's like, hey, help me to build infrastructure? Because I wouldn't know that once we hit this specific amount of employees and numbers and you know what I mean? Kind of a thing.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, Mike, because I work with larger groups and you can be acquiring practices. Okay, $1 million one here, 1.5, $2 million one here. But all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, I need a CFO. That's a high level, I want to call it an expense because on a P&L it shows up as an expense, but it's really an investment in your leadership team. But like that's a hefty person, a COO. All of a sudden you're sitting on 3 practices doing 12 million in revenue and you're like, I need somebody to run all this. You need a COO. These are high level people. And my point is, if you've been buying practices nonstop, renovating them, hiring teams, putting in high paid doctors, all of a sudden you're in a situation where there's no cash to bring on the COO, the CFO, the people you need. And so part of this is, yeah, it's a race to get to 1 million, get all the revenue in, get all the new patients. But once you get past that point, start to figure out how to build a profitable organization because you're going to need it for the next step. And the thing I have found that I've seen proven, I can't write a book on it yet. I don't have that body of like research, but I've seen it over and over again is if you can limit your growth, then you'll start to see that profit increase. And so don't keep chasing that expense structure. Go, okay, we're going to be good for this year with this team and we're going to serve 30 new patients a month. And that's just how it's going to go. And then next year, we're going to expand or hire more team and we'll take on 45 a month, but begin to put that in place to create that profit.
Do you think it gives you time to think, time to plan, look into the details of, oh, we do need a COO or we do need an associate as well?
You made such a good point because oftentimes growth, it controls us. We get caught up in it and we're just running. It really takes discipline because that scarcity mindset really kicks in when you go, we're only going to take 30 new patients a month. That freaks people out because they're like, I'm turning away 15 or we're scheduling 90 days out or 120 days out. I'm like, I know. And you know what? They'll be there in the future. They will. You keep growing an amazing organization. They'll be there. This is what's best for your organization right now. And even you create that headspace to where you're not just chasing growth all the time. You're now turning your eyes as a CEO to what the organization needs.
And then what if you're in a season where you've already decided I'm only going to take in 30 new patients a month, but then something external happened, COVID, right? Or anything, right? And something external happens where you're like, crap, I should have been selling this whole time. And now I'm like, you know what I mean? And maybe just for that season, how do you feel? What do you do? What should we look into?
Yeah. This is why I love talking to you, man. I feel like you read my mind. You keep asking me like the next question. And you and I didn't rehearse this. Here's the thing. When you're in that 0 to 1 million, it really is about sales and it's about getting new patients in the door, create revenue, right? When you get past that $1 million mark and now you're in that kind of 1 million to 10 million range, it has to shift to marketing. And here's what I mean by that. We often look at marketing as solving our needs today. Josh, I need 45 new patients a month, so I need to market. I'm like, okay, that's a need for today. And Michael, to be honest, marketing doesn't often solve that. We're not going to change that in the next 30 days. You know that. We all know that. Marketing is positioning you for the future. The reason why, like in the first phase of business, it's so important just to sell because you need revenue. You got to keep the lights on, keep people paid. The second phase is exactly what you just said. we don't know what the market's going to do. We don't know what the economy is going to do. We don't know what the community is going to do. So you'll face these kind of ups and downs, these dips and challenges. But if you're investing in marketing, you're securing your future. You're creating momentum and attention, not for today, but for 90 days, for 6 months, for a year. And so you begin to shift that, put it into marketing and build this brand that becomes resilient during times like that. So to answer your question, the best thing to do to solve a downturn is to have been investing in marketing 6 months ago to get you through that.
You have to have, man, I guess a lot of more insight when it comes to passing this 1 million mark, when it comes to your team, what you need, profit, marketing. So what can help us with that? Because we're not all immediately, once 1 million passes, we know these things, right? We just
I
continue
know.
to sell sometimes and that's it. So is there something specific, kind of like a check mark, a checklist or anything like that?
That's a good question, man. I think you're right. So much of this for me was trial and error. There's a lot of good books. Scaling Up is one of those books that I would say is super impactful. It talks about these 3 phases of business and even gets into $10 million plus and what we're trying to do at that level. First step is probably just realizing the grind of a lot of us know how to grind out $1 million business. And to be honest, as we're sitting here in 2024, I don't know that that's as unique and as special as it used to be. It's absolutely an accomplishment, 100%. Most people will never accomplish that in their life. But I think we realize with some humility, a lot of people can just grind that out. But that skill set is not going to get you to the next level. And so people out there are going to be listening to this where it's like they've acquired practice 2, they've acquired practice 3, and they're trying to apply that same skill set, grind it out, sell, create revenue. And you have this like sneaking suspicion that it's not going to work. It's not going to get you where you need to go. And at this level, it becomes leadership, it becomes marketing, and it becomes a scalable infrastructure. So turning your eyes from those things onto what's going to get you to the next step. Probably the first step is just self-awareness.
Self-awareness. So noticing these things, because a lot of the times I feel like you bottleneck yourself and then you're like, no, I can do that. You know what I mean? And then why would I pay this associate this much if I can just double down and block out my schedule and do this and that?
Yeah.
It might work, but I don't know.
And dude, I'm so aware, Michael, probably one of the things I internally not struggle with, but I'm very aware. Most founders of companies like agencies like ours only get to a certain level and they can't get to the next point. We're kind of at that point where like most founders kind of bail because they just don't have the skill set to go to that next level. I know that. I am intentionally investing in myself because I want to get there, man. I feel like I can. And I don't want to become the main limiting factor of this organization. I'm investing in myself. I'm aware of it. I'm trying to grow because I'm like, we can do this. I can do this.
Nice, man. Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate your time. And if anyone has further questions, you can definitely find Josh in the Dental Marketer Society Facebook group, or where can they reach out to you directly?
Guys, I'm at Instagram at Joshua Scott. I'm still in my account. So hit me up. Tell me you saw this, heard this episode. Would love to hear from you, but also website s8e8.com.
Nice. And at the same time, Studio 88 does have an exclusive deal for you. So if you want to go in the show notes below, click the link, check it out if you are in need for a marketing company or a website, especially a website. If you like my website, Studio 88 did it. So go ahead and check it out. And Josh, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure, and we'll hear from you soon.
Thanks, man.